As you know, we're joined here by Dr. Jonathan Landman. He is the Assistant Commissioner from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Dr. Landman, thank you so much for joining us here on Ion Park.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be able to come out and just so glad that we're working together, district and department together. It's great.
It's a nice opportunity for all of our folks at home to hear a little bit more about PARCC.
Yeah.
But before we talk about PARCC, let's talk about you for a minute. Now,
Sure.
as I mentioned, you're the Assistant Commissioner for Teaching and Learning at the department. If you could just tell us a little bit about your background and perhaps what your role specifically looks like.
Sure. So actually, my career has been largely out in the school districts. I spent about 10 years as a history and social studies teacher at Brookline High School, and have since that time worked as a high school principal, as an assistant superintendent in a couple of systems, as a superintendent, and came to the department about a year and a half ago. My portfolio is broadly titled Teaching and Learning, and I've got responsibility over the curriculum instruction unit of the department, and over the last year have been responsible for the rollout of a large initiative called Retell, which has been providing professional development to the field about how to meet the needs of English language learners. So that's what I'm up to mostly, and I've been involved also with this PARCC rollout process.
That's a huge responsibility you have. Has the transition been smooth?
It's terrific, actually. Love working at the department and feel like it's a really great thing as a person with 20 plus years of experience in districts to be bringing that experience to the department and that perspective to department work.
And we're moving forward, and as we mentioned before the show, I just appreciate the support that you and your colleagues have been providing for us here in the districts. I know it's not easy.
Well, we really appreciate the partnership and being able to do things like this, come out and speak to the community about what's going on in education. It's great.
Right. So we're going to talk about PARCC for a minute. Now, Jonathan, we're lucky to be working here in Massachusetts, where we have some of the best schools in the country. And so far, as an assessment tool, we've used the MCAS to help get us there. How is the PARCC going to continue that growth and take us deeper into our students' learning?
So it's a great question. So I mean, one of the things that is a question that's out there in the community, in the public, is what's in it for Massachusetts when we've had so much success with MCAS, so much success with our former standards. So I guess the way to start this is to say that in 2010, the Board of Ed adopted new curriculum frameworks in both language arts and math that incorporate the Common Core state standards. And this shift to the new standards means that no matter what, we're going to have to evolve our assessments, because we need to have assessments that are aligned to these new frameworks that we've put in place. And the PARCC assessment is potentially an opportunity to enable us to assess some of the shifts that are demanded in these new frameworks in some really exciting and innovative ways. A little bit later on, I'm going to show you some sample items from the PARCC website, and we're going to get to look in more detail at how this works. But broadly speaking, the PARCC assessment is going to give us the opportunity to probe more deeply into areas of mathematics that students have not been able to show us their understanding of using the MCAS assessment. For example, when students take the MCAS assessment, they're not able to have a protractor or a ruler. Sometimes they don't have a calculator to allow them to do certain kinds of problems depending on the assessment. And on the new assessment, we're going to have a whole range of tools potentially available to students through this online approach, so that we have a broader range of skills that we can assess throughout. And because of the nature of the assessment questions, we'll be able to probe more deeply to see whether students are able to draw from various pieces of their mathematical understanding to solve real-world problems, and to do so, to show us their understanding in a way that is based on their own constructed understanding. And in language arts, we're going to be able, through this assessment, to do a better job of seeing whether students are able to ground their evidence of their comprehension in evidence from text. And probably most excitingly in this new assessment, we would be able to assess students' writing in a really deep way every year from 3rd grade all the way through 11th grade, which is going to really help us to move writing forward, and again, move this attention to using evidence as a basis for demonstrating our understanding forward there as well. So,
right.
Okay.
No, I appreciate you sharing that with us. And for districts, this is a shift. Again, we're moving forward. Now, Chelmsford, like other districts, have been looking at the PARCC questions, and we've been looking at the website, and we've been looking at the navigation device. Can you tell us a little bit of difference between the two types of questions?
You mean between the PARCC questions and the assessments in MCAS and PARCC? So one huge thing that's been talked about quite a bit already is that MCAS has always been a paper and pencil assessment, and with the shift to PARCC, while there is going to be a paper and pencil version of PARCC available, at least until the point when we have technological accessibility for students around the state. With the PARCC assessment, we have this new online approach, and the online approach, for example, in mathematics, allows a broader array of question types, which allows us to explore aspects of mathematics, a variety of mathematic thinking that was not possible to explore with the old MCAS system.
Sure.
And again, in language arts, allows us to do more of that work, connecting the text and evidence to these responses. So I think those are probably the big shifts is around moving to technology and then being able to use item types which allow us to assess some of those new skills.
Nice.
Yeah.
And just so we're clear for the people watching, is PARCC going to work in conjunction with MCAS or replace MCAS?
So for the time being, what we're doing this year is a field test. And so this first event that's starting up now, very soon, in the coming week, and it's going to be happening over the next several weeks in districts, is actually not an assessment of students. It's an assessment of the assessment itself. And the field test that we're doing right now is a part of a random trial that's happening all over the country. Over 1 million students are participating in the field test, and in Massachusetts we have about 80,000 students who are participating. And the students who are participating in the field test, districts were offered the opportunity. I don't know how Chelmsford chose to go whether they, but districts were offered the opportunity either to have students do the MCAS in the area that they're participating in the field test, or as well as the field test, or just to do an either or. So I'm not sure you could share with the community what choice Chelmsford made in that regard. But what we're doing with the field test right now in no way is intended to replace MCAS. It's really an opportunity to take a close look at whether the PARCC assessment is able to assess these new skills that are demanded by the shifts in the standards effectively or not, and to see whether it is an assessment that is as rigorous or more rigorous than MCAS, and whether it is able to assess with validity and reliability. In other words, whether it is able to really assess for the skills that it intends to assess for. So we're in that process right now. Now, next year, school districts will have an opportunity to choose between either participating in PARCC or participating in MCAS. And when they make that choice, they'll be making that choice for students in grades 3 through 8. And then also, if they decide to participate in PARCC, they'll be giving their kids a chance to take the PARCC assessment in 9th and 11th grade. In 10th grade, now, actually, let me slow down. And then in fall of 2015, the Board of Education will take a vote about whether or not they want to sunset MCAS and make a transition over to PARCC or not. And that decision will be based on this weighing of how good PARCC is. So next year, those districts that choose to participate in PARCC instead of MCAS will, at grades 3 through 8, will take PARCC rather than MCAS. At 10th grade, however, because 10th grade is the high stakes year when a competency determination is linked to students' results, in 10th grade, we're going to be staying with MCAS at least through 2016. In other words, and then beyond that, for students who don't pass the MCAS in 2016, they'll stick with MCAS at least through graduation. So for the class of 2018, and because we want to be absolutely fair to those kids, that they have, for the high stakes assessment, they have an assessment that they're familiar with. The 10th grade is going to be in place no matter what for a number of years.
Right.
If the board votes in fall of 2015 to make the transition to PARCC, however, then starting in the spring of 2016, statewide, PARCC would replace MCAS at every grade except 10th.
Yeah, except 10th grade.
Yeah.
And thank you for making that quite clear. And as you know, the implementation of this, it makes sense to do the field testing, not only for the validity of the testing, but also too for districts in terms of getting that technological
Absolutely.
component. And so as we're moving through, our tech department, along with our curriculum and assessment folks, are really interested to see how this plays out.
That's very important. In fact, I really should have said more about that. This is not just a test of an assessment of the assessment questions themselves. It's really an assessment of how the technology works. It's an assessment of how the implementation works out in the field. And by the way, let me just say, I mean, this is a field test. We're expecting that there are going to be some glitches and bumps along the way. This is a huge undertaking. You know, during this field test process, there's going to be, again, over 1 million kids participating in a new assessment. And we know that, you know, that's a very big, complex undertaking. The good news is, there are no stakes associated with this whatsoever. It really is an opportunity to try this thing out in all of its complexity. Yeah.
And I keep reinforcing that.
Important. I'm glad you do it. It's good.
It's important.
Yeah.
But we appreciate the opportunity to test drive the test for our kids and staff. We're doing this show to reach out to our community. Again, when you hear PARCC, there's a lot of things associated with it, and people, we have so many acronyms anyway in education that we want to make sure that it's clear. How is the DESE reaching out to not only communities like Chelmstech, but the entire Commonwealth in terms of letting people know what PARCC's all about?
So we're really trying very hard to get out there to answer people's questions and try and share good, clear information about what's going on, because this is obviously an important transitional moment. Although the decision hasn't been made, we're trying something out that is potentially very consequential for the state. And then there's also some materials, again, at the PARCC site on the Department of Ed website. And we've also put together a couple of pages that share links to a variety of the other places where people can get information about PARCC. So there's a very extensive PARCC online site where people can get information about the new assessment, so the PARCC online resources is very expansive, and I think on the second page of these resources we go back there because one of the most interesting sites to explore is one that I'm going to share a little bit of information with you today. It's the sample test item section. I think a lot of parents will find that page on the PARCC page very interesting. The department has been over the last couple of years working to develop a range of model curriculum units. I don't know if folks are trying any of them out in Chelmsford or not, but a lot of these model curriculum units are now available to review on the curriculum page at the department's website. Nice. And within the curriculum units, there are some wonderful curriculum embedded performance assessments, which in many ways are similar to the assessments that are part of the PARCC system. So folks who are interested in educators who are interested in trying out assessments that are kind of PARCC-like are certainly encouraged to take a look at those model curriculum units if they want to try teaching one and then seeing how their kids fare with those assessments. That's a terrific resource.
And also be interesting to parents as well and to the community at large.
And they can take a look at assessments that sort of that are reflective of the kinds of things that are assessed in PARCC. So on this page, the Department of Ed PARCC site that I mentioned, the link is here. And I also want to mention something interesting here as well, that the Department of Higher Education in Massachusetts also has a web page that's focused on PARCC. And that's very interesting because this shift to the new Common Core standards in PARCC is about shifting to college and career ready standards. And there's actually a very important piece of the puzzle we haven't actually talked about yet. It has to do with higher education. If we adopt PARCC, the assessment that students will take in 11th grade, which is different from that MCAS. MCAS ends at 10th grade. Yes. The assessment that students take in 11th grade will actually provide evidence of whether or not a student has achieved college and career readiness through their high school education. And the Department of Higher Education, the Board of Higher Education, is going to be watching very closely what happens at the K-12 level. If the Board of Ed, the K-12 Board of Education, votes to transition to PARCC, then the Higher Ed Board is going to be taking a vote about whether to accept that college and career designation from a student who's taken the PARCC assessment as evidence that a student is ready to matriculate to college into credit-bearing courses. And that's a really important piece of what's going on right now. You know, Massachusetts, for all that we've done so well nationally and internationally, it's also true that of the students who matriculate from Massachusetts high schools who have done everything they were supposed to do, they passed MCAS in 10th grade, they've completed their graduation requirements, they've earned a high school diploma, and then they go on to higher education in Massachusetts. 37% of those students, when they get to higher ed, end up enrolled in developmental courses that are not credit-bearing courses.
Right.
And those students, when they enroll in those non-credit-bearing developmental courses, they are having to spend their family's hard-earned money
Sure.
to take those courses. And the data shows us that the students who have to take even one developmental course are significantly less likely to complete college. And if you have to take two of those developmental courses, that you are actually 1/5 as likely to graduate from a higher education program. So it's really important that we have an assessment system that really signals to students, to teachers, to parents, that kids are on track to college and career readiness, and if they achieve that college and career readiness, it's going to be a very powerful signal then to universities, colleges, that kids are ready to go. And I think that we don't even know what the implications of this broader long-term are, whether this
Right.
assessment could potentially become a signal that universities, colleges all over the country will be using as a basis for deciding who's ready to jump in and be successful in college. So in any case, you can follow the higher education conversation about all of this at their website. And then I think another really important place to mention is that there's a site that talks about the accessibility features and accommodations features that are built into this new PARCC assessment. And I'll show you guys some of that when we take a look at the demo in just a minute.
Sure.
So there we go.
I appreciate you sharing those resources with us and with the folks of Chelmsford. There's a lot of information out there, and sometimes people don't know which questions to ask and how to access them. But they will be on our website, and you'll be able to access them from Chelmsford Public Schools website. So Jonathan, you have some questions to share with us straight from PARCC?
Straight from PARCC.
All right.
Okay,
so let's take a look.
All right, I think let's start with the language arts assessment. So I'm gonna open up a particular set of questions. This is a set of questions that are available to the public, and I really encourage parents, students, teachers to jump on in and take a look at this material if you're just curious to see what this PARCC assessment is going to look like. So
you're not going to quiz me here, right?
no, and don't quiz me either.
I mean, because we can
I'm
cut
going to show
this.
you this
Okay, this
stuff,
is
but
not live.
there we go.
Yeah. Okay.
We're just sharing what's in here. So these are some a sample from the 6th to 8th grade span in English language arts. And this particular item that we're going to take a look set of items that we're going to take a look at right now are I think really illustrative of how PARCC is going to be different from MCAS. This is the stuff we were talking about before. So what you have here is a whole series of questions. It's part of what's called a simulated research task. That it would be part of the performance-based assessment in language arts, which takes place in March, which followed later by a summative assessment in May, and those two pieces together form the end of year and the performance-based assessment form this summative piece of the PARCC assessment system. Anyway, so what you have here is the first of a series of resources about Amelia Earhart. And you can see here, students can scroll down through the paragraphs of this reading, and the paragraphs are numbered. And on the right-hand side is something that's very familiar to us from standardized assessments. It's a multiple choice question about where the students are asked to show their comprehension of the story, or excuse me, in this case, it's a biographical piece about Amelia Earhart. And what's interesting is that there's for each piece of the assessment, it's in this mode. After the multiple choice question, there's a Part B question. And in the Part B question, and this is something that does now depart from the MCAS assessment, it asks, in which other paragraph in the article does a quotation from Earhart contribute to the reader's understanding of her character in similar ways to what was addressed in Part A? And what this is requiring the student or the participant in the assessment to do is to demonstrate that they can draw evidence from the text to reinforce their demonstration of their comprehension of what's going on in the text. I think that this is something that in the current MCAS assessment, the only questions which actually ask students to back up their answers with evidence from a text is in the open response items, not in the long composition items either. But now with this new assessment, we're able to dig much deeper to see whether students are able to show the relationship between their answers and evidence from whatever it is that they're looking at. And that's going to be very, very important. So if we keep going now, I'm just going to keep moving through this. This is the second item. This is one of these technology-enhanced items, which are part of both the a performance-based section of the assessment and also the end of year. And here, we're still in the same reading. And look at the question on the right-hand side. According to the biography of Amelia Earhart, which events had the most significant impact on Earhart's life? From the list of events, create a summary by dragging the 4 most significant events and dropping them in the boxes in chronological order. And here, a student, I'm just going to make it up, and I'm going to put some events, drag and drop some events down here. Here again, what is somewhat different from a multiple choice kind of assessment is that the students are actually being asked to organize the information using this technology-enhanced system.
Sure.
In the current MCAS assessment, to have a student show you that they're able to organize information, you'd have to have them write.
Right.
So this is allowing you to assess in a very efficient and actually cost-effective way some of the things we haven't been able to get at through MCAS except through open response questions. So we still have a lot of writing in this assessment, but it allows us to get a deeper understanding of students' comprehension and use of the evidence piece through the technology.
That's a nice feature.
Yeah. If we keep moving now here, see we're on the next page. So now here's the second resource about Amelia Earhart, and here, interestingly, this is now taken from a website. And one of the things that you're going to see in a minute, one of the things that I think is really exciting and interesting about the PARCC assessment is it really allows us to assess how students are developing their comprehension skills around the whole range of 21st century media. So unlike with the paper and pencil assessment like MCAS, once we can get all students into a computer-based assessment like this, we'll be able to give students readings, audio clips, video, show them pieces of a website, and really see whether students are able to navigate, make sense of all the different kinds of media, which these days they need to be able to make sense of in order to make sense in the world.
And those types of skills are in the Common Core standards as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now this question is actually the same kind we've seen before, so I'm just going to keep going. But maybe while I'm here, I'll show you something else. So one of the other nice features of this assessment system is that it also provides a range of accommodations that kids can draw on that may make it easier for them to be successful. So for example, if a student has some kind of a visual impairment, they can change the background color. So that maybe it's easier for them to read. You see, so maybe this helps them to be able to read better. These are accommodations. These are available to all students. Nice. Take a look at another one. A student can add a magnifier. So if they're having trouble, reading something, or maybe this is better for those of us in the 50 up range. But they can drag the magnifier over and are able to see better here.
So they have a chance to personalize it,
yeah,
similar to how they would on their own device.
Yeah, I'm just going to try and get rid of this the magnifier so we can see. This is another word. They can mask answers and just uncover one at a time, which for some students can help them to focus and can help them to do better on the assessment. There are other interesting features like that. For example, this one over here allows students to, let me get rid of this first for a moment, as they're eliminating answers, if they decide, well, I know B is wrong, they can put an X over B and say, okay, I'm still trying to figure out whether it's A, C, or D, but I'm going to get B out of the way. So these are things that are available to everybody that help students to be able to be successful. One of the things we're very excited about that would really be a step forward with the PARCC assessment is that for English language learners, they'll be able to drag their mouse over any word and get a definition. So for students who are,
Nice.
So that if they're having a challenge with a particular bit of vocabulary, it doesn't get away, from their being able to show us, broadly speaking, their comprehension. So, okay, so let me move forward here. Keep showing some more about this. So, hold on a second.
And these are test-taking strategies that we've been using with students for a long time. These are technologically based, and that's a shift that most districts are making anyway.
There you go. And I think it's really, the reality is we need our students to know how to use these technological skills for the workplace, for college. This is what they need to have. So it's a good thing that we're making the shift to having these things be part of the assessment as well. Although it's certainly very important that if a student is going to be asked to do an assessment like this, that they've had opportunities in the classroom to work with the technology first. So it's really important that we find the funding for those districts and schools that haven't got that kind of access to get to that point. And that's something we're working on in the state right now. So moving through this, I'm just trying to get to one more piece of the puzzle here. So this is another situation where the students are going to be asked to use evidence to demonstrate, to back up their point of view. So below are 3 claims that could be made based on this article. Select the claim that's supported by the most evidence. So you pick you select a claim, and then you go down below, and then you have to pick the evidence that best supports that claim, the quotes from the story that best support that. And now here, as we mentioned, there's now varied sources of media. In this particular question, there's a video.
That's great.
The students are asked to watch a video, and again, then they're supposed to, from that video, they're supposed to demonstrate, here's the question. In the video, Amelia Earhart, Life and Disappearance, the narrator mentions people who qualified Earhart's skills as adequate. What's the meaning of this phrase intended to suggest to the viewer of the video? They have to give their comprehension, and then, again, in Part B, back it up. So, and then I want to just go to this last piece here. Forward through. So now, here's where PARCC departs in the most significant and exciting way, I think, from what we've been doing so far with our MCAS assessment. So currently, MCAS has open response questions every year, but only at 4th, 7th, and 10th grade do we have a long composition writing assessment.
Right.
The MCAS has been wonderful. It's been first in class in the nation. But PARCC really does promise, and we'll have to see how it delivers, but promises to go beyond that in this area in particular. Every year, from 3rd grade to 11th grade, students will be asked to write a significant piece of writing as part of the assessment, which will encourage, around the state, encourage us to put more attention and focus onto this work of teaching students how to communicate in writing. And these assessment questions are taking us to the next level. In that, so let me just back up for a second. So when the state was developing, when the Common Core assessment frameworks were being developed, a lot of the effort that went into the pre-work before the standards were developed had to do with going on interviewing professors of freshman English and freshman history and science to see at the college level, what did professors say that their students needed to know and be able to do to be successful. And what we heard over and over and over again in that interviewing process was that students needed to be able to back up their claims with evidence. They needed to be able to express their ideas clearly, and they needed to be able to back up their claims. Well, in this new set of writing assessments, what we're asking students to do is to draw from multiple sources back up their claims with evidence, and write about it. So look at this assessment question here. You've read a website entry and an article and watched a video, so 3 different resources describing Amelia Earhart. All 3 include information that supports the claim that Earhart was a brave, courageous person. The 3 titles are, and then they're there, and those you can see the students can toggle back and read, click onto any of the, whichever the pieces they need to go to as they're writing their piece.
Nice.
Consider the argument each author uses to demonstrate Earhart's bravery. Write an essay that analyzes the strength of the arguments related to Earhart's bravery in at least 2 of the 3 supporting materials. Remember to use textual evidence to support your ideas. So here students are being asked to synthesize what they've learned from multiple sources and then to make an argument based in evidence.
Right.
And that, if we can get our students to the point where they're getting into the habit of doing that on a regular basis, we're really going to be preparing them for success later on.
And to be able to have them do it in a time-efficient manner as well. It's not an all-day process, like the grade 4 writing prompt or the grade 10 writing prompt. And to be able to think critically and to be able to provide the evidence in a timely and concise fashion as well.
That's right. So actually, that's an important distinction also between MCAS and PARCC. MCAS is an untimed assessment. PARCC, there's actually more sessions, but the sessions in PARCC are timed. And there's a specific amount of time that's projected that most kids are going to take to do the assessment, and the maximum allowable time is 50% more than that. And that's because the research has shown that for the vast majority of students, if you add that 50%, anything beyond that, they're not really going to do any better on the assessment. For students who have an IEP, which specifically allows them an untimed amount of time, they'll have that time still. But for most students, there'll be you're right, that's a really important point. It's going to be a more time-delimited thing. So should we move on to the math assessment?
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, so I think I'm going to show math at a couple different grade levels. So let's start with right here. With a math question from, I believe this is a 4th grade math question, if I recall correctly. So we were talking earlier about how there's a broader variety of question types in the math assessment. This is one of the new assessment options that was not available on MCAS, which just had multiple choice, short and long. Short and open response questions. This is a question where actually the students are able to be a little bit more constructivist in their response. If you think about it, when you do a multiple choice question, you're giving students 4 options, they're picking one. Here's one where you're saying to the students, construct a response. So look at this. For a school trip, 72 students will be traveling in 9 vans. Each van will hold an equal number of students. The equation shows a way to determine the number of students that will be in each van. 72 divided by 9 equals. The given equation can be rewritten using a different operation. Use the drop-down menus to select the operation and the numbers to complete the equation. So take a look. So here we go. All right, now we're going to go, I see 72 is over here on the right-hand side, right? So I'm going to go over on the left, and I'm going to choose here. I'm going to choose 9, and I'm going to choose times, and then my question mark equals 72. So here I've built a response. So it's allowing us to see a little bit more what students can construct on their own, although we still are giving them scaffolds to do that.
Right.
Here's a question where students will have scrap paper. Here's a question where the student just needs to figure it out on their own and then type in their answer. Patricia needs to read for 120 minutes each week. She reads so many minutes Monday, so many minutes Tuesday, so many minutes Thursday. How many more minutes does she need to read this week? Student needs to do a little arithmetic problem there. Here's kind of an interesting piece. One of the things that one of the test developers in Massachusetts who's focused on math was sharing with me, this is a question which allows students to do some graphing. And one of the things she shared with me is in the current MCAS assessment, whenever we want to have students graph, it has to be done by hand in an open response question. So we're therefore very limited in the number of graphing questions that we give to students because we're worried that it may be hard to read their handwriting, hard to figure out what they really understood and didn't understand. By contrast, with this computer-based assessment, we can probe in a variety of areas. Graphing is one. If you look up here, there's some others as well. We've got a ruler that the students can bring on board, a protractor,
That's great.
Calculator, and some questions will later on when kids get older and more sophisticated, they'll have a graphing calculator. Other kinds of tools that you can bring on for specific questions, which enable the assessors to look at a broader and sort of more complex array of students' mathematical understanding. So this one is about tiling. An art teacher will tile a section of the wall with painted tiles made by students in 3 art classes. Class A made 18, B made 14, C made 16. What's the total number of tiles? Again, arithmetic. But now we're going on to a different kind of question, this graphing question. The grid shows how much wall space the art teacher can use. So actually the answer above was 48. So use the grid to create a rectangular array showing how the art teacher might arrange the tiles on the wall. So here, a student has to create a rectangular array, but there are multiple potentially correct responses. And again, if you're in a multiple choice situation, you can't give kids the opportunity to show that flexible thinking. Here you can. One of the questions that's actually not in this sample, but I know that is included in this new assessment method is a model where students can choose all that apply, all the answers that might be correct. And again, if we want students to be learning a more flexible approach to mathematical problem solving, where maybe there are different ways to get at an answer, giving the students the chance to choose all that apply allows you to see whether they're able to find those various different pathways to a response. So here, student would create a grid. I'm not going to finish it, but you see how it works.
Sure.
When they've got their grid completed, they move on.
And these are scored electronically?
These are scored electronically, yes. So here, Andy created this is the third part here, and then we'll talk a little bit about how these build. Andy created a rectangular array showing he would place 56 small tiles on the wall. He placed 7 tiles in each row. He wrote a multiplication equation using the question mark symbol to stand for the number of rows he used. And here the students would build an equation using these various buttons and the numbers down here, and actually would type out an equation. And again, here's a constructivist question which allows the student to create their answer, but it's something that can be scored efficiently so we can go further in terms of our probing. So I think maybe I'll move forward from here to then maybe go back here for a moment. I want to show also something in the 6 to 8 math item set. So I think it's pretty interesting. So this is now a middle school, I think a 7th grade question set. And we saw one like this. Again, this is creating an equation using these drop downs. So we'll just move right past this one. I want to get you to a different piece here. So this is the one I wanted to show because I think this also illustrates something more. So this is a question about scientists sending a rover to the moon. Their plan is to study a rectangular area of the moon by placing a grid over the map. On the grid, one unit represents 1 kilometer. The rover will land at 3.51. So we start plotting our graph, and I'm not gonna go through this whole process, but it's 3.51 and 3.54, and then we keep going, and ultimately, I'm making it up now, but the students, the participant in the test will create a rectangle, and look at what happens as we go on further down. First, they have to find the 4th vertex in the rectangle. Next, they're asked to talk about the horizontal and vertical length of the rectangle, and then they're asked to find, this was all, the graph they saw was in kilometers. The final question is, find the area of the moon exploration area in square meters. Wow. So what's happening here is, through a series of questions, the assessment is looking to see whether in a real-world situation, the students can perform a variety of operations. And first they're plotting, then they're calculating length, then they're converting from kilometers to meters, and they're representing the area. And this is allowing, without even getting to an open response kind of item, allowing the assessment to probe deeply into how flexibly students can use various mathematical algorithms and tools that they've learned.
Jonathan, it's absolutely amazing, the depth that we can go with our students in terms of their assessment, that we couldn't previously. And you're obviously passionate about this.
I am. It's exciting.
And just to see that, I've seen these questions and I've seen these types before, but to have them explained so concisely and be able to demonstrate it live, I know that our teachers, our parents, and we're going to encourage our kids to watch this as well.
Great.
To be able to see this and really kind of capture, what PARCC's all about. It's I can't tell you how much we appreciate here in Chelmsford that you decided to join us.
Oh, and thank you so much for giving us a chance to show folks what this is about. It's going to be a really important process over the next year and a half for us to evaluate whether this promise of PARCC is realized, and if it is, I think this is going to really, enable us to move Massachusetts to the next level of excellence, which I think is a very exciting prospect. And I really, again, thank you so much for sharing the communication with the community. It's tremendously exciting that people get to hear about what's going on.
Absolutely my pleasure. Come back and see us anytime.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome.
Look forward to it.
Thank you.